Committee. FinCom committee.
Selection committee.
Selection committee.
Thank you.
Right.
Not too long, so anyway. Hello, Henry.
How are you?
What do you go by, Henry? What do you go by, Hank?
You can call me Hank. You can call me Henry. Just
curious.
call me late for dinner. I mean, professionally, everybody called me Henry when I was at work because that was just. But I'm fine with Hank.
And in that case, I'm going to go with Hank.
Yep.
So there's one opening, two candidates for one opening. Okay. I've been doing this for so long because I've been doing this for so long. And so I always open with the incredible softball question right down the middle. Why do you want to do this?
Why? Buried in there is why, for God's sake.
No, actually, it was going to be. But we're on Zoom.
Yeah, I know.
I've had to learn to clean things up.
I love your sense of humor. It's literally what I said. I mean, I think that Marie and I moved here in '95. Marie's been very involved in town activities, all kinds of things, right? You probably know Marie extremely well.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, was, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for 40 years, in my career. I wasn't around much. And this is just an opportunity now, I'm here, I'm settled. I don't have to work or travel and I certainly have expertise in the field. I don't think
Yes, you do.
any issues with that.
Yes, you do.
So,
Yeah.
it's just, if I can help in any way, I'd love to, if I can help, if there's a particular aspect of the committee that needs shoring up or, I probably won't do accounting for you, like, bean counting. I won't do debits and credits.
That's what Dan Sherman's for.
Anyway, usually you have a town accountant that does all that stuff.
We do.
It's not.
Yeah.
It sounds like, it's much more of an oversight advisory.
Yeah, I can give you a little overview of it.
Yeah.
So I'm the current chairperson for finance.
What do you think's involved as you walk in here tonight?
So that's what I was thinking is that, from the few times I've tuned in, Marie drags me to a lot more meetings than I probably would have ever gotten to over the years, because she's into everything. Again, I think it's kind of an advisory role. You need oversight, review. If you need people to do presentations, certainly I'm comfortable with that. If it's, anything. I mean, I can analyze data with the best of them if that's what you're looking for. If you need more help in another area, let me know, because I've literally probably done from soup to nuts in, all the way from literally cost accounting all the way up to strategy and steering investments for Raytheon. So, I mean, that was a whole, I've covered it all. So
So we've been kind of doing this. Jim and I have been doing it for a while. So next we're going to let Jim do FinCom stuff, billability, blah, 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 and then we'll get to issues.
And you know who everybody is. You know who Jonathan is.
Yeah.
yes.
The committee is made up of the three of us.
Right, yeah.
Chairperson, moderator.
I'm the town host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I host the party twice a year.
God bless you for doing it. Gets a little raucous sometime. I've seen that.
Oh, yeah.
That makes it more fun.
Some people thrive on that.
Some people do. They do.
One time I was in farmland.
We got a limited time tonight. Go ahead.
One time I was in farmland and this woman goes, she just grabs me. She goes, you weren't that funny last night. And I looked at her and I said, I didn't have a lot to work with. not that's not my role.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot to work with. Yeah. So, okay. So Jim, go ahead.
So we were looking at the resume. We were talking a few minutes beforehand, and I said to Bill or somebody else that I figured you probably work, 70, 80 hours a week looking at this resume and looking at, corporate. Most of us that have been in the corporate world to spend any time there, I fully understand. So, you mentioned advisory role. So, right, what are we? We're an appointed committee. We are an advisory role. We don't have the ability to completely change all sorts of things, but we give guidance. So we have a 15-member board. We break up into subcommittees, and those subcommittees will meet with the department heads, various department heads, as the budget process begins and as they start developing a budget. So we get deep down into the weeds. One time somebody called it we're like the Ways and Means Committee, maybe for town meeting or for the town council reviews them too, but they don't get into the subcommittees like we do, right? So we go in and we look at them all at a subcommittee level. it's sort of a spreadsheet kind of environment, last year's versus this year's, the changes, why are there changes? And we see that sort of stuff pretty cleanly across most of the departments, meaning it all looks very similar. So it is, we do vote on, excuse me, we vote on the budgets. We review them all at the end of the season. We vote on them all. We vote whether we agree with them, and if we don't agree with them, we would put forth a different number that would go to town meeting, depending upon situations and working with town council and things like that. So basically, we do the oversight. Every department comes before the full body, again, the 15 of us, and we meet and review their budgets. And then again, at the end of the period, we vote on those budgets, and then we put forward we vote on articles, and all of that in the backdrop of the bigger forecasting and budgeting. So we have a forecasting subcommittee that we actually just met tonight, looking at next year's budgets, next year's potential income. And so we help, again, in that regard, with the department heads. Steve Mayo, obviously, he's the executive side. He manages most of the department heads. School department manages the schools, and those are the two bodies that we help give advice to. And again, there's 15 of us, and we break it up into the subcommittees. Usually we try to get you in a subcommittee that helps, meet some of your prior experiences. But at the same time, you're in a subcommittee and you're doing that role as one of the people. So we meet twice a week, twice a month when we're in peak season, which isn't really until the January, February timeframe.
Okay.
And then we roll leading up into town meeting. So we're looking at this fall and into the beginning of next year, the budgets that would be FY25 budgets. We've already solidified FY24. That's now running. So we look at FY25 budgets. Goes to town meeting in the spring.
Does the year run on a calendar?
It runs on a June basis. Fiscal basis is June.
Yeah, July 1 is the beginning of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
How about your availability?
Is that Massachusetts thing, or is that our
It is.
Wakefield thing?
Yeah, it's a Massachusetts thing. So I believe that every city and town in Massachusetts runs on a July 1.
Yeah, so that's why we're in the spring activity.
Yep.
And then, myself or whoever's the chair will step up and give our recommendation at town meeting. If you've ever seen me do that, that's what we do.
Yeah.
We do all the stuff behind the scenes, and then we just make this one brief statement that says we agree with it or we disagree with it. That's sort of the backdrop of who we are. You hit it on the head when Bill asked. It's an advisory and oversight.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel. I mean, you obviously you raise your hand if you think there's something that looks out of line, or you say, why is that? That looks crazy. I mean.
Yeah, and we get some, 15 very capable people, so we get some interesting dialogue in the meetings. Yeah, and we vote on things, and we can have a 7 to 8 vote on certain things, but the committee is now bringing something forward or not type of thing. Yeah, sometimes it goes smooth as glass, and then sometimes it's like all of a sudden there's something
It's like the real world.
pops right up. Yeah,
The rest of the world.
Point, right?
absolutely.
The point of the committee is not to sort of rubber stamp a budget. It's to ask the difficult questions, and sometimes it's to, recommend something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's embedded sort of it is embedded in the town charter, and we have some fiscal policies that we sort of align ourselves with for having a certain amount of free cash and a certain amount of available funds to make us look good when you go to a bonding committee.
Yeah.
When the town goes to bond the school, all that plays into how it looks, financially speaking.
Yeah.
How long have you lived here?
Since 95, so almost 30 years.
So you're looking around town. What do you think could use some improving?
It's a good question. I will say, and I mean this truthfully and honestly, I mean, I think that some amazing things have happened in the last 10 years. It's really changed. I was really worried, honestly, about Wakefield prior to about 10 years ago, whether we were going to make it or not, but I think we've turned that corner. So that's my impression, right? I see all the new development. I think it's great. I'm definitely get excited about that. I think, I think things that need improvement from a very practical perspective, our roads are a mess, but that's because of the construction, right? And I'm hoping that at some point, the town will address that when they're ready, when the construction is at the point where it's not so crazy. But I think Reading has faced the same, that whole downtown area has been all completely redone. They've built new buildings, new condos, and they brought some life back there. And So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for economic development. I'm not for crazy out of control development because I think Wakefield's also has that nice balance where it's
Right.
got, we've got the lake, we've got Breakheart, and I take advantage of all that. I mean, if I had a free minute, I was either in Breakheart or I walk the lake 3 times a week now. So that's.
You have more time now.
I have more time now, yeah. I'm actually lost 20 pounds and I'm healthier, my blood pressure's down, and the doctor's like, what are you doing? I said, I just stopped working.
I'm retired.
Don't tell anybody, he said, or we'll be out of business, sure.
What I found amazing, same thing when I was working, my wife would be driving around. She said, where you going? So what do you mean? She was home with raising my children. I said, I only see this town in the dark. Like twice a day in the dark. I finally found out where parks were when my kids were 7, 8,
right.
9. Right. I said, wow, this town's actually pretty nice. No idea. Literally, but go ahead, sorry.
No, that's true. So certainly roads need, but we're doing tons of road work today that I was avoiding. So construction I was avoiding because Montrose is a big avenue for us. We're always going down Montrose to connect.
Oh,
My God.
oh.
That seems like that road has been under construction for my entire life. But I understand why. A couple of times it was because of that electrical facility over there. But
Yeah.
anyway, and what else? I would have said to you before the new school was going in, I would have said we need a new high school. But I mean, thank God that went through. I'm very big on education. So education, inclusive education, obviously, I would have to say without a doubt. Marie was a big force behind post academy. And so things like that. I mean, we're all for that. I think it makes the town a better place. I think it attracts, it makes the community more attractive. So, yeah.
Good.
So can I ask, other than the high school, so we know that's a pretty big financial, nut ahead of us in the next couple of years. What do you see as the biggest kind of financial challenge that Wakefield will face as we look ahead over the next 5 years? Putting on sort of your forecasting hat from your professional career.
Yeah. And, so I've been in commercial and government regulated industries, right? So both, and I've seen both. I think for Raytheon, probably not unlike a town or a municipality, it's the unpredictability of the stream of government funding. I mean, the government administrations can change and suddenly, a pocket of money that you might have been counting on was going to dry up or it's going to go away or, it's not favored by the incoming administration. You have to do workarounds and prepare for that. So I would say, I mean, for me, at a macro level, maybe that's too big of a level, but I see that as, how much money Wakefield can count on from the state and federal governments, given the political climate we're in. I guess political climate is a big, maybe at the root of it.
So kind of pushing on that a little bit, as a FinCom member, how do you sort of prepare for that? How do you build, how do you put us in a position to weather those storms?
Well, I've always been a favor of, reserves. I think you need to have reserves. We'll be in a big deficit spend mode with high school, I imagine, a little bit. In other words, we'll have taken on a lot of debt. So it might be a little harder to find the extra nickels and pennies that you're going to squirrel away for a rainy day. But I say that without knowing how you guys do it today. I mean, I imagine there's a rainy day fund of some kind. And that's probably why. So that's probably one of the better things you can do for the uncertainty part of it. And then the other part is just, I think having a good, solid plan helps your finances, right? If the plan of where we're going is really solid, that is really a big factor in how your finances are there to support it. If you didn't have the high school in the mix over the next 10 years, you weren't planning to build a new high school, for example, then you'd have less concerns, right? But we are, and we have, and that's going to be a load we carry, and we'll have to be diligent, I think, around our finances. That's all. And I think it just means watching them closer, being prepared, having rainy day funds, and doing better planning, doing a good job of planning.
Great. Have any questions about anything we've talked about?
Did I answer your question? Is that direct enough?
Yep,
I mean,
that was-
you know,
yep.
I'm kind of up here, I know, but that's, I'm not, I have.
I wasn't expecting you to say, well, based on this line item.
Right,
No.
I don't have that kind of work.
Replace 2 dump trucks.
Yeah, well,
Gonna say, come on, Hank, get up.
I've dealt with that. I've dealt with my boats being shot up in the Great Salt Lake and stuff like that. So I've dealt with just about everything.
Wow.
You can imagine. Oh, yeah, a bunch of guys went out and bought speedboats, and then they was trying to see if, I'm telling tales out of school, but then they wanted to see if the the new laser cannon would hit them as they all scurried around. I don't know. And I said, like, who gave you the authority to invest, whatever, they had bought 5 boats at like $50,000 a piece or something. And anyway, nothing surprising.
Run into Jim Bedingfield, did you?
I know Jim, he lives in Reading, right?
Yeah.
I know Jim very well. We're old friends. He's had a rough patch with his children and his daughter and then his wife.
Yeah.
I was heartbroken.
He was a Raytheon, and he and I used to sit next to each other and spin, and so that just made me think about, the purchases and that kind of stuff, yeah.
Jim was, he was a good ally. He,
Funny guy,
funny guy, very funny.
very
And
funny. Yeah, but he's just, I haven't been in touch. He's just, it's too bad.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Sorry, I didn't mean I.
No, I just,
Yeah.
I reached out to him maybe only a month ago because we hadn't chatted in a long time. And I said, what are you doing now? And you want to get together for lunch? Because I thought and he's literally packing up and leaving Reading.
I know.
And so I just couldn't believe it. I just said, Jim, I don't even know it. When he told me everything that had happened since the last time I talked to him,
Yeah.
I just said, wow.
All right, sorry.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
That's Raytheon made me think right away. Mentioned purchasing boats. I'd heard many stories kind of like that. So,
Jim knows more. Jim can tell you some dirty
They'll
tales.
deal with a little less of that. You're on FinCom.
yeah, right.
Yeah, well, that's where we get the oversight. That's where we apply the oversight.
The oversight comes in, right?
We've got pretty good controls in place.
Nobody's buying boats and putting them up in the harbor.
No.
Excuse me. Another question. Do you attend town meeting regularly, or when was the last time you were at town meeting?
The last time I was at town meeting was the vote for the high school.
Okay.
So Marie and I both have, we go frequently, Marie much more frequently than me. And that's partly because I've only been retired for a couple of years.
Yep.
That was some show, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's an unusual town meeting.
that was, yeah. Some of them are,
Getting 8 plates. Like the old guy on the Ed Sullivan Show. Okay, we get this. No, we get this. Who's over here? What's going over here? Yeah, it's great.
you guys have a lot of patience. And I understand that's how it's gotta be in a, a democracy. You've gotta kind of, and in the end, it's a good thing, but God love you for some of the stuff you have to listen to.
CAC first went to high def. I walked in and my wife said, "You've just got to stop rolling your eyes." Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah.
It's, giving everyone a chance to be heard, and I know you have to sort of do that.
Yeah. Which I always do. When somebody tries to move the question right away, I just say, I'm not moving the question. Everybody's here to want to think. I was just sitting there, could somebody move the question?
I think the Boys and Girls Club was ready to
Yeah, they were.
unpack their childcare operations.
Yeah, that was probably what it was. Anthony ran in like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm moving the question, so.
And that is, I mean, the FinCom meetings are also public meetings. It's a little different now because we're on Zoom, so they are archived on WCAT. And people do, not frequently, but people do come to provide public comment. So you will hear from the public that we'll have people in sort of the room or in the audience for some of those meetings too.
Yep. Yeah, and the commitment, I think I explained it, but for the summer months, we don't usually get together much. Once the budget is solidified and town meeting has taken place, we don't do too much, just.
Do you meet in person? Do you care if
We
you
do.
meet in person?
We do.
I like meeting in person.
Our preference has always been, our preference has always been to meet in person, because, yes, because we have a lot of dialogue and it's just so much easier to do it in person. And we don't do a lot of voting, we do a lot of back and forth and we vote later in the process, generally speaking. So, yeah.
Good. No, I think that's great. It'll be great for a newcomer if whoever it is, because I think that dialogue is probably a good place to learn what's going on. And,
And the subcommittees are the best, those are great.
I was in today, the first 3 hearings this afternoon were on Zoom. I'm like, who goes? Why would you Zoom? Plus, I don't know how to put that stuff on the thing or do that.
Put your papers up.
The first time that the town that you guys met on Zoom, and it just coincided with how we were going to conduct the first COVID town meeting.
Yep.
And I had to get another laptop because mine's a dinosaur. They stopped me at the Edgartown airport about 5 months ago. And I'm like, why? They go, we have to stop people with old ones because they might just use them for something. Oh, okay, thank you. That's a compliment. But we're sitting there, Ann Santos, Ann McGonigal Santos was on the board. And all of a sudden, I'm just, flopping around and nothing's happening. So all of a sudden, you must have, Ann goes, right. She goes, Bill, go get Nancy.
Yep.
That's my wife. She's like, go get Nancy.
I do remember Nancy saved that meeting.
Yeah, she did. Well, you guys are like this. And now I'm the chairman of the board of this therapeutic prep school out in Brookfield, and we have to do outside. And somebody always be like, who's Nancy Delaney? We'll just leave it there. It says it there. It makes it easier. I can come on and then I'll do this, but
Oh, God.
I like being live. Yeah, I like being live.
So we are live and we usually meet, downstairs or here, depending if we're Zoom. But,
Yeah.
any other questions?
I mean, not unless you have some of me. I mean, I think that, I have, like I said, I've worked in quasi-government, if you will, in a regulated industry. I was also way back when. I thought I'd be working more directly in government in my career, but it never worked out. But I do have some feel for the political side, so I'm not a complete idiot about that.
Yeah.
I was a registered lobbyist in Rhode Island, for example.
Oh, nice.
It's an interesting place to be a registered lobbyist.
Oh my God. I had to watch, I was always watching for the big black limos to pull up and take me out. Yeah. But my boss he was on the in with all those people. So.
Work to your advantage.
That was nicely put.
I'm glad I left before. What is it? Was it Cianci that started doing all the crazy stuff?
Buddy.
Yeah, Buddy was running the show for a long time.
Yeah.
That was Providence, but Providence kind of is Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Providence.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, as a side note, I was a co-op student at Raytheon when I was in college, so.
Interesting. You got indoctrinated.
I was up at the missile systems up in Andover. Yeah. There you go.
And they still make missiles in Andover. Well, they're not supposed to tell anybody.
Well, the Patriot was in its infancy, and the Hawk was the king back in the 80s.
The Patriot system is still the biggest cash cow in
Yeah.
all of RTX. That includes all Pratt Whitney, includes Collins Aerospace now, but it's the biggest cash.
Yeah.
It's the greatest invention
After it performed appropriately in live TV
in live TV.
a number of years ago, that was it, right?
And they just shot down a hypersonic missile with one of the old systems.
No kidding.
Yeah, they shot down one of the Russians' big hypersonic missiles. The Germans gave Ukraine one of their old Patriots. It was 40 years old.
Yeah.
It still shot the damn thing down. And
Wow. The people that put that together.
so the people
Incredible.
up here in Mass are all celebrating. The people out in Tucson are crapping in their pants because now maybe we don't need our own hypersonic missile. If we can shoot down their hypersonic
With
missile,
that?
yeah, then maybe we don't need our own. So, it's internal politics.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it's a 40-year-old system. It's still, of course they keep upgrading the radars. And
Absolutely.
everything, but it's a good system. We're lucky we have it.
All right.
Okay.
We've got our next one
Thanks.
coming
Yeah,
in soon,
yeah.
so.
All right. Well,
Thank you
good luck.
very much.
Yeah, it's great meeting you. Yeah, it's really great meeting you.
And certainly if,
And
if you don't get
give you a
appointed,
call.
please,
Yes. I used to
please
coach
also,
I used to
stay in
coach
the loop too.
Oh, I absolutely will. No matter how it goes, I'm not going anywhere. And
I used to coach the travel basketball team. I did it once, 3 years for my oldest, 3 years, something like that. So I'm adept at sending out news whether you made the team or didn't make the team. I've been saying that for so many years here. Usually we have like 6 for 2, you know, so it's like, oh boy, yeah, so.
Well,
But I tell everyone though, we're, everyone who applies for anything, we're a town that runs on volunteers. So,
Yeah.
you've got a great
It was
resume.
great, it was great
Yeah.
meeting you.
Yeah.
Really, seriously, that was
and
fun.
like I said, if not this time, then maybe there'll be another opening if you think, that, where I
Yeah.
can help. And if not, God, don't worry about it. I mean, I'll just exercise more and lose more weight.
There you go. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Hank.
Yeah.
Thank you. We got here down to the right.
Wheel, Lori around. Can't be whispering.
I was going to say you're on now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. What vote do you have at 7?
We have the public hearing for the public restroom and parking lot renovation at Wakefield.
I think so. Let me check with the boys.
Okay. Yeah.
Ready for Laurie, correct?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm doing 30 days. I went to, we went down to Rehoboth Beach with like friends from college, other friends who met our friends. She's calling music festival.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Hey, Lori.
it's Miller.
I'll see you over there. Yep, take care.
Okay,
guys.
bye.
Lori,
Thank
good
you,
to see you.
Steve.
No problem.
Hello, Lori. How are you? I'm glad we kind of made it here and I was like,
Not like poking you at the checkout at Whole Foods.
yeah, oh, no, that was fine. No, the lesson was at the bank. We sat at the bank. Yeah. Weren't you at the bank meeting?
Nope.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Bugging him to get this scheduled.
No, it was really funny. He was behind me in line at Whole Foods and I'm like, it feels sort of pseudo inappropriate not to say hello. Although it was like rainy exercise clothes, all that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I go
I think it was-
to the gym always. That's why I'm like.
Yeah, I always feel like I've been dragged in by something.
So, all right. Because you have a gap, you have to be interviewed again.
Okay.
Okay. So I always start this off with this. Why do you want to do this?
Again.
In your case, why do you want to do this again?
And I asked myself that question.
Ah,
No, so when to take this on a personal level, when I stopped, there were sort of 3 reasons why I stopped at that time. I had just finished treatment for breast cancer. I was exhausted. I had a kid we were doing a second college search with I have 2 sons.
all right.
And the third was I was always the liaison for the schools and I was on my 5th superintendent in like 7 years and I was gassed. So I was exhausted and it just seemed like the right time to take it. It was pre-COVID. I don't even remember what year it was, Jim. So I was
still on FinCom, so it was probably 2018.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, because it's definitely pre-COVID.
It was 19, but yeah.
So I was tired and it just seemed like I should let someone else have a chance
Right.
and take a break. And I took a break and I'm like, I'll go back to it when the schedule opens up.
Oh.
And the schedule has opened up. And I am interested. I do think that Jim and I know each other well, but I know the FinCom doesn't have a lot of sort of power under the
Teeth, I like to say.
teeth, perfect, under the charter, but I do think there's something healthy about 15 people sitting around a table talking about what's in the numbers, why it's there, does it make sense, even if the teeth aren't there, as we would say.
But when something comes up and the town meeting notices, whenever you guys say, oh, no, this wasn't voted, and then it can be.
Yeah, when I get up there and say the same thing 11 times, but the 12th time say something different, people
Right.
realize.
Then we're looking at a full
So
discussion.
I
Yeah.
do think the discord is healthy.
So do I.
And so I think it's
So do
good to
I.
have some good brains in the room talking about it. I often find now at this point too, as a subset, is that I get asked a lot of questions because people think I'm either still on or still no.
Yeah.
So they'll ask me things that I either have to look into or ask questions. So I'm like, well, why don't I just know the answers or try to be in the room again?
Yeah.
If there's room for me, and if there's not, that's okay too. So
Sure.
that's the whys.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an interesting observation on the schools. I didn't realize that there was that many superintendents
So
during your
it was,
tenure.
it was Joan,
Yeah,
the interim,
yeah.
Reich, Kim,
Tim.
and current.
Yeah, and Doug.
And you know what's funny? It's not that it was terrible. It was just exhausting every year because they are not native to budgeting. So
Were you
whenever-
on the school subcommittee?
Yeah, she was chair of that.
of that, yeah.
all right,
So
yeah,
none
just
of
making sure.
none of the experience was we're poor. It's just, it's a lot more work. And so every time I would get a superintendent, the budgeting is not native to them. So that would always be like a new thing. And sometimes we had new business
Oh,
administrators.
business
too.
administrators, yeah.
So it was, I forget who it was originally, and then it was Mike Pifferling, and then now I don't even think I know who it is. So it would always be a process to get them up to speed. And I was more than happy to help them, like probably the best, any of them, like if you want to go before, if you're asking for stuff, let's talk about how, like, what do you want and why? And like, so we would go through the process, and then we also refine, like, going through budgeting, how it is to present at town meeting. And I would give that my all. So by the time I got to Doug, I was just like, are we really going to do this like again?
Yeah, you gotta rewind this whole thing.
Rewind the whole thing. And I think at that time too, if you recall, it was a little contentious they had gotten the big boosts and then they wanted 11%. And then it was like very contentious. So those years took a lot of bandwidth. Not that I'm willing to offer bandwidth, but it was, in light of the other things that were going on in my life, it was exhausting. Yeah.
And the other thing that was happening was the finance committee meetings were very contentious because it was a
taking
lot
a lot of heat.
There was a lot of times that no matter what was brought back, and that's still the case today in no matter what the school subcommittee brings back,
Yeah.
it's not enough because it isn't the right answer to some parts of the team.
Yeah. And so,
It was just contentious even in that small room is my point.
So even before I left, we tried to make it so that like the schools were coming in earlier and we were learning about stuff earlier in the process. And I don't know if you remember this, Jonathan, if like, so that we weren't all waiting until the end of the cycle to drop a bomb of like what they were really looking for and what the school committee really wanted. So it was actually an interesting process. I'd be interested to see how it is now, if it has evolved.
Yeah, if you want. It is evolving, but they're required to come at least twice.
Okay.
And when they come the first time, it's in the early part of say it's February-ish or something like that. They sort of don't have all their pieces of pie together, but we have a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of assumptions and a lot of discussion about those assumptions and those sorts of things. And then when they come back the second time, and like 1 or 2 years ago, there were 3 times they came to the team. And we're refining the subcommittee process because the subcommittee process has sort of evolved to something that we're not comfortable with. We need to do more as a subcommittee for the body and for the town. So we're still working on that.
In light of the fact of the proportion of the budget that it represents, it does need more gravitas, but it just.
Yeah. And in trying to value everyone's time, as any department head, we don't want to be there, 11 times with them to talk about the same things. We're trying to value it. And so anyway, we still go to meetings and those sorts of things.
Do you still do like the morning periodic meetings?
Yes. Yeah, the finance and facilities meeting.
Yep.
And then that's what we're trying to refine. We're not, it's not enough.
No, and it was hard to get it, like with people with day jobs, to get people to be able to be in a room, like additionally to.
But the answers and the level of the detail we're looking for on a finance committee level just doesn't happen in that meeting. So that's that was one of our continued challenges.
Okay.
So we're meeting to work on that.
Yeah. I will say this is sort of going a little more upstream too. I think the other thing that's probably changed since you were on is we do have the tri-board meeting in October where we bring the council, the school committee, the finance committee together just to really sort of level set where we're starting from, like what are expectations for the year ahead. So Doug will do a presentation around, here are the challenges that we have. It's not a budget, but it's sort of a kickoff to budget season, the way that
Well, it's interesting because there can be red flags at that point that if everyone just knows at that point. Remember the transportation year where it was like the transportation costs were off the grid and everyone said no one told anybody, but it's like, you knew that in September, so we should just communicate it in September.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the intent. So like we know, for example, that, there are some positions in the school department that have been funded through COVID funds. Those are winding down. We had some discussions around the treatment of expenses for revolving funds. We'll continue that discussion as part of the tri-board meetings that we're talking about it now before we get into budget season.
And is the tri-board meeting the whole entire FinCom or just the
whole
FinCom is invited? Okay.
The FinCom is invited, yes. And then so usually we do the preview of where we think we are, well, we do the preview of where we are financially, you know,
Yep.
kind of going into the cycle. Dan does a portion of it and I do a portion of it, just laying our piece of the
Sort of the forecast.
overview of the forecast.
Does anybody meet in person anymore?
So this one we're going to be doing on Zoom just because it's so many people. It's really hard.
We normally met in person, like the whole FinCom wouldn't always be up on the table.
Yeah.
Because the councils would be there, some of the school
Yeah.
people would be there. It was just, we had this huge U, it was just too big.
Too big.
Yeah.
But finance committee people are there, that
Yeah.
just, anyway,
Are the regular finance committee meetings Zoom or in person?
both.
So can you come in person or is it depends on the meeting?
Our desire is to be in person and we have been in person.
Oh, good.
Well, no, we have not been in person since COVID. The
Oh.
finishing of last year was remote, but we want to go back to being in
There's
person.
so much better. I can't even imagine the dialogue on Zoom.
Yeah, it's challenging. You know, what's up on the screen, what's down on the screen, who's trying to raise their hand,
And,
who's doing that.
right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's convenient that I'm doing it in one of my kids' bedrooms that's an office, but you know, I'd prefer to be in, and so we've tried it here, but there's too many of us. So I don't know exactly, Steve and I are continuing to want to be in person.
Okay.
But we're going to tape it now for purposes of historical stuff. So if we go in person, we'll be here doing this. This is being taped.
Oh, I wasn't.
Sorry, I should have.
We should have
Oh,
made
that's
you
fine.
aware.
So behaving.
So the Zoom-like
Most of
meeting
my
will
act.
happen and it'll be a tape.
Okay.
But we're looking to go back face to face, unless the town has some other need.
But the idea is every meeting now, so in our post-COVID world,
Right.
every public meeting
Meeting.
is recorded.
Recorded,
So
okay.
that is a difference from beforehand as
Yep.
well, where it was a
Yeah.
little more anonymous.
Okay.
Right,
And you mean fun. Sorry.
yeah, the old finance committee meetings were very anonymous, so yeah, exactly, other than whoever came, you know, that's a fair statement, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the board is pretty much similar, it operates and acts similar how it used to from a cycle perspective, you know, when we ramp up and when we're busy, and then we tail off for, you know, half the year. None of that has changed.
Okay.
Boogie's still on it. That's a funny story. Boogie's like, well, Lori Wheeler was applying it, you know, and, you know, she applied last time. You guys didn't appoint her. I'm like, she didn't apply last
To be
time.
fair, I did not make it. By the time I realized that there was an opening, it was after it had closed.
Yeah.
So I zipped a message along, but it did not meet the deadline.
Finally, I contacted you. All right, Bill, stop.
That was a conversation. That was.
Friend of mine.
That was a conversation Bill and I had the dry cleaner. He thought it might still be open. So I'm like, I'll go home and I'm going to zip that together, you know, without dotting my i's and crossing my
So
t's.
some new people, some people that have a lot of longevity, still the same sort of dynamics of the group, I would say.
It's a good group.
Yep.
A really right group of people, experienced group of people.
Yeah, and then probably the one other thing, I don't know if you were there, but if I'm the subcommittee chair for the DPW, I go to the town council meeting to tell the town councilors what our subcommittee said about DPW.
Oh, that's new.
It's a very brief statement, but, you know, the department head is there and then we give our position of what we saw and what we did.
Yeah, and the intention behind that is we wanted to kind of create a dynamic where, you know, the department head's going to present their budget, but, you know, if FinCom had some concerns, we wanted to kind of get those out in the open and start that discussion earlier.
Yeah,
So that it
so it'll be-
wasn't just you know, it hits the floor of town meeting, you know, there's a
so
lot of
I'm-
this stuff, misunderstandings or questions that we could work through ahead of time.
Yeah, so that's part of it, which is nice. I found that to be a great addition, so. Other than that, yeah, I don't know.
I'm all set.
Same stuff.
You all set?
I'm just curious, sort of coming back, you know, potentially after a couple of years of a break, aside from sort of the high school, what do you see as sort of the biggest financial challenge facing the town over the next 5 years?
Or an issue that might have need financial boosting. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Nope, that's,
just piggyback.
You're asking me which one needs attention?
Yeah.
what do you see as the sort of the biggest thing ahead of us as you?
There you go. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. What's the biggest thing we
A
need?
defined thing, however you want, other than the high school, because we
Yeah,
know that's a big thing. We
Other
know
than
that's a
the high
big
school.
cost.
I mean, just due to the sheer portion that the schools represent in the budget, I do think I'm, you know, pro-public education, but I think the nitty-gritty, the challenge of that is looking at all the costs associated with it and making sure it's not a runaway train. I think back in my first go around, I think people probably perceived me as very pro schools, but I think the schools were underfunded for so long. There was so much catch up. There were not department heads. There were like roles were not filled out. Things were not streamlined across town. And I know from my time that those things happened. So I'd like to see how those assets are being utilized, how the schools are. I do think that school budget is challenging. I also think subsequently too, I have great faith in Mr. Mayo in terms of the reserves, but like I haven't looked at those since I left. And I'm assuming they're healthy because I'm assuming he's a town manager, and I'm assuming between he and Dan that they've made some, but I'd be interested to see, like, because I feel like that we were headed to a very healthy position with the reserves were in good shape. So if the reserves are in good shape and the school budget is not sort of unwieldy.
That's nice. You went from challenging to unwieldy. That's nice.
And I don't know because I haven't been in the details.
Yeah.
So I don't know, you know, and to the extent that it has continued to grow, there's, you want to see results. Results can be defined in a myriad of different ways. Whereas like in my time before, results were defined at Greenwood was teaching reading one way and Joel Bear was teaching reading another way. But if you got ELA department head, he or she could streamline them, bring them all together. So I think challenge-wise, like where do we stand with all of that? And how are those resources being used?
You've got to be to a meeting. That's the only reason I was.
Yep.
Okay.
No, thank you.
No. Yeah, no, you have 5 minutes.
And then the last piece would be in that zero-based budgeting rule, one of the things that governmental budgeting that always drove me batty was that if you got like 100 grand last year, then you had to get and spend 100 grand this year. Like, I just like what do you need and why? And I used to tell the school department that all the time. Tell me what you need and why. And then if you're asking for more here, tell us how over in this area you didn't need as much. So I think that's sort of like how my brain works and what I think I would bring to the table for like what we need to pay attention to is like, I'm not always about like last year was, so it is so.
Yeah, what was the last time around that? There was a big issue. Is that the revolving?
Yeah,
What
so,
was the one I'm usually making sure somebody's in line to talk.
Yeah, so, go ahead.
that was one of the questions that came up. So
Yeah.
it's been a weird couple of years in terms of school funding because, some of like the revolving account for meals, for example, well, meals were funded by the state. We didn't know if that was going to be pulled back at some point. And so you had some of these accounts that, just became very large. There were other accounts you would probably remember better than I would, given some of you had more discussions with Dan. There's some timing issues around the spending in some of the special ed revolving accounts. And so one of the big discussions at town meeting, you may remember if you were there, is the school budget overfunded because of the reserves sitting in those accounts?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, it came down to the revolving account
Yeah,
numbers.
right. That was, and which is what you're saying. Hey.
And I don't know that we've kind of come to a consensus as a town on that question, which is one of the reasons why, as we look ahead to the tri-board meeting this month and as the next budget cycle, I think that's an issue that, we're all going to have to wrestle with, to figure out what is the right approach to some of these, especially now that we have a little bit more uncertainty in a sort of post-COVID world. I don't want to say post-COVID because
I remember
still going on, but-
that was an interesting discussion. That's why it's still sort of, usually I'm keeping an eye on who's next with that. And I thought, well, wait a minute. It's just what you said. Because somebody could have said, wait, just because you had 100,000 last year and you only spent 90 or you only spent 75, that doesn't mean you get 75, you get 100,000.
Yeah.
A pretty basic, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I think when it comes to that budget, that's what I think I brought to the table. That's what I'd like to be attentive to. Not that I'm going to be like wringing a dish towel trying to, you know what I mean? But it's sort of like the thought process that I think I would bring to any of the budgets, but I think.
No, and that was a particularly complex discussion because it wasn't just you spent X last year, why should why should you allocate more money next year? It had that sort of timing issue. It had that, there were so many other issues revolved around that I don't think, because it came to a head in town meeting, I don't think collectively as a town that we really dug into that as fully as we could have, which is one of the things that, I think as we look ahead for the next budget cycle, we have to do.
And did I address your question on a theoretical?
You did,
Okay,
yes.
because I didn't know if they were like what buildings and capital projects, but it was just like from a theoretical perspective, like where would my eyes be? What would I be?
That's probably even more FinCom-ish, if you will. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't
That's why-
expecting you to say, you
that
know,
triggered in my mind,
we need
oh,
a new
right, I remember-
DPW truck or
Yeah, it
whatever.
was-
Yeah. I mean, because I could go that route too, but I feel, but I,
Numbers, we need them.
Got 11 years ago, need 2 more now.
Some of the towns out west, they literally have bean suppers and they all but raise the barn. And we have, all the monitors have this, it's called the gavel line. Ay, ay, ay. So anyway, but it's really interesting if you need it, and they throw stuff out and it starts picking up this time of year because there's gonna be fall town meeting. But they can spend like 2-3 hours on the new fire truck. And everybody gets up and it's pretty. It's
a big deal for a small
It's
town.
pretty what town meeting it was all about or is all
Yeah.
about. But it's interesting to see, I'd always think of that, they're like, don't make fun of that because they get up and, the new fire truck. I remember once their new hook and ladder thing went 2 nights.
Nice.
Article 3, and then they got into the other one. That was great, yeah.
the cruisers are on a rotation now, because I was just like, how many cruisers do you need? Like, what- exactly.
Remember when did, what's his name, got up and got 2 more cruisers? Remember that night?
Yes, yes. See, you remember.
Yeah.
Do you,
Good stuff. I
do you
always remember, but that was
touring the salt,
Yeah,
the
I
salt
found it
shed
interesting and I didn't
over-
understand it, which is.
Yes.
Yes, did you go on that? I have toured, I have toured the salt, were you on the salt shed, on the tour
I wasn't
over
on,
the?
I've had a tour since then.
The salt shed?
I've spent a lot of time.
Salt shed over
Too many times.
I know, that's, I couldn't get it out the second time, over at the, what is it?
pit.
The pit, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions that you have for us?
I sort of jumped the gun because I was curious how things were going since, because I think things have changed a little bit post-COVID. The dynamics have stayed the same because the charter stayed the 15 folks. No, I think I kind of fired them off. I'm a little too comfortable, Jim. I fired them off pretty quick.
That's fine. No, that's,
You didn't have to do a spiel about, how.
back to my
FinCom works.
original question. Why do you want to do this again?
Again, I know.
There you go. All right, we need 15 minutes. He's got to be to a big.
Oh, yes, all right, so I'm gonna go, I'm gonna run.
Kicking you out.
good?
Oh, no, I'm happy to do so. My dog is missing me, so.
I'll give you a call. I'll give you a call one way or the other.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Bye.
All right.
Yeah, I'll give
Thank you, Lori.
Bye.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, we are going to executive session and we will not be returning to this meeting.
All right, let me close on out.